Great. Good evening. Have you trained?
Yeah, praise the Lord. Welcome. Sure, yeah. It's a short wall. There we go. Sounds great. Is that better? Okay. And welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening. I apologize for the confusion. We were having a little bit of technical difficulty. I don't know if it was like actual technical difficulty or if it was user error. So it's good. We got it all together. So we are glad that you joined us. We are back from being snowed out, I guess. Did you transition it to the, or is it still showing that? Okay. Chelsea's going to say hi now. So we're back from snow, and it's been kind of a long week. Lauren broke her foot last week, so that was crazy as well in the midst of all of that. So it is quite the ordeal. So Chelsea, kind of give us a recap of where we've been so we can, like the stories that we've gone through.
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't know if it's working still.
What's the first story that we went through?
Well, obviously the creation story.
We did go through the creation story because we started at a logical point, right? At the beginning.
The beginning, correct.
And so we talked about the creation story, and then we talked about the story of Adam and Eve and the fall of man in Genesis 2 and 3. And what do you remember the word that's used in there to describe God? The name for God that they use? It's El
No.
Shaddai.
Oh, I was going to say that, and then I felt like that
And
wasn't right.
what's the point of El Shaddai? There's not an actual we use it as the Lord Almighty, but that's not really the accurate term when we're thinking about it from the Jewish perspective. El Shaddai is the God who knows what?
I don't remember.
Knows when to say enough.
Oh, yes. I'm
She
sorry.
remembers it after I say it.
Well, yeah, because you remind me.
This is how it works. That's how it works. So we've walked through that, and we walked through the story of Cain and Abel, and then a couple weeks ago we were on Noah and the flood, and it really mirrored the creation story, right? And we're going to get back to that. I just want us to understand where we are in this study. So we're going to be in, if you're following along, we're in Genesis chapter 9. We're going to be in verses 18 through 28. This obscure passage of Scripture that is extremely overlooked. Matter of fact, when I read back through it, it is, in my personal experience, it's been so overlooked that I don't ever remember being taught on this particular.
I mean, I think for myself reading through the Bible, I've read it, but not thought anything of it.
Right. And it's quite an interesting tale, and we are going to, if you want to just read it all the way through, and then we'll talk about, hey, what's going on here. And remember, our focus is to read the story and start to examine what is wrong. What are some things that we look at and we go, this is a problem here. This doesn't make any sense.
Do you want me to read it in the New King James, or do you want me to get the NIV?
I've got the NIV right here if you want to read it.
Okay. That's good.
Either way, it's fine.
So 18 through 25? I
18
can find
through
it if you
28. It's
through 28. Okay.
Yeah.
So, are there going to be names that I'm going to have to pronounce?
Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and Canaan, and Noah.
I can do those. I can say those. Okay, so let's look at chapter 10, verse 18.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, verse 18. The sons of Noah, because we are in chapter 9 and not 10.
Chapter 9, verse 18 through 28.
Which I was in the right one on my Bible.
You're there.
Okay. Chapter 9, verse 18. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his 2 brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out that his youngest son had done to him, what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend the territory of Japheth. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Altogether, Noah lived 950 years, and then he died.
So, what is this story?
I see why people don't really teach on it. It's a little awkward.
But what happened here? Like,
I don't know.
There's a few questions I have.
It said naked a lot, and that
there's
just makes it awkward.
There's a lot of naked in here. Which, does that remind you of a story that we've been through?
Oh, totally reminds me of the creation story. Well, not the creation story, but the story of Adam and Eve.
Story of Adam and Eve. It wasn't it funny that that story continually talked about
being naked.
Naked.
Yes.
Being naked. And then here we get this back to back Noah's nakedness.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. In the English, and without any historical backdrop or any Jewish teaching historically, we read this and go, what?
Basically, that's exactly what we do. What?
Why is Noah mad?
Right.
Is he? How did he? Like,
why was he naked?
well, he was in his own tent.
Okay, but again.
But was he actually naked, or
did the brother just say so?
Like, what does he saw his father's nakedness, but then he wakes up and he's angry.
And how would he even know that he did?
And then, well,
why would he wake up automatically angry?
I don't understand why.
And why is Canaan involved?
Really? Why is Canaan involved?
Nope, it wasn't Canaan.
It was Ham, the father of Canaan. Yeah. What did the grandson have to do with anything?
Aren't these great questions? Ham, the father of Canaan. And the list of their names. Go ahead. That is the patriarch. Yes. Canaan, that is the patriarch of the land of Canaan. Yes.
They not consider Ham the patriarch of Canaan, and Canaan was his son, or is Canaan his son, and he's the patriarch of Canaan?
Canaan the son is the patriarch. Yes. The next chapter tells us that Canaan, that he was the patriarch, and out of him came all of the ites that inhabited the land of Canaan. Mm-hmm. The Hittites, the
Canaanites.
Yep. Father of Sidon, his firstborn, and of the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinites,
the Arvadites,
Zamorites, and Hamathites.
Hamathite.
A lot of ites going on.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the ites. Like, it is a great look because Canaan, this is the land of Canaan, is named after this. Okay, let's talk about this. Why did he refer to?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Why did he curse Canaan? So, I want to take us back first of all and line us up with a couple of things. So if the story of Noah and the flood mirrored the creation story from Genesis 1 and the beginning of Genesis 2, which why we break the chapter there, I don't know. Just food for thought.
Right.
Then what if the story of nakedness and a vineyard or a garden mirror each other? What if this
the
is
story mirrors itself?
the story that this story mirrors Genesis 2 and 3? So what happens in Genesis 2 and 3? God places Adam and Eve in what?
The garden.
A garden. What happens when Noah comes off the ark?
He's on the land.
He plants a vineyard.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Because he was a man of the land.
And what happens in the garden with Adam and Eve? They eat of what?
The fruit.
They eat of the fruit. What does Noah do?
Noah drinks of the wine.
He makes wine, and he takes the overflow of this fruit, and he becomes drunk. And what gets exposed in his drunkenness?
His nakedness.
His nakedness. What gets exposed in the garden when Adam and Eve eat the fruit? Their nakedness.
Right.
What happens? What would you naturally, if you've read, God cursed them. And so when you're naturally looking at this story, if you're following it along that way, you're looking for a curse, which is interesting. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we're going to get around to the rest. This word that's used for curse here, Noah is the only human being who uses this word curse that's used for curse in the Bible when he curses Canaan.
Wow. So does God use it at some point?
All the rest of the time that this word is used for curse, it is used by God.
Wow.
This is showing.
And he's not the only one, not the only human to curse somebody.
He's not the only human to curse or to curse someone in the Bible. But this particular word that is used for curse here is only, this is the only place, and he is the only human to use it. All the rest of the time, this word for curse is reserved for God.
That's interesting.
And so Noah is stepping into the place of God. So I'm going to take us back to this. We're going to back up in the story, and we're going to talk about a midrash.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a midrash is like a commentary of sorts from the Jewish tradition.
Mm-hmm.
In our Western tradition, we go to a commentary for what? Why would you get like a Cliff Notes version
just
of a book?
Just to know the story.
Let me know the facts and the information. Right. In the American
someone's
culture,
view,
usually.
Yeah.
In the Western culture, there are all kinds of commentaries about the Bible, and these commentaries are very systematic. They are going to tell you what they want you to know. In the Jewish tradition, in the Eastern tradition, a midrash or a commentary would not be deductive, but it would be inductive. It would be encouraging you. They will give you enough information that you have to go back to the text to research it to figure out the information. So, let's talk about this. This word, so we're going to deal with what the midrash says. The next thing I want to talk about is this order of Shem, Ham, and Japheth is ordered from youngest to oldest, which is completely abnormal. Completely abnormal in the Jewish culture. If you were making a list of your kids, you would list the oldest first and make your way through. So that's kind of an interesting statement.
Knew what his younger son had done to him. Why does it say it that way?
Younger, not youngest.
Okay. True. Okay, I'm just asking.
And then we see this echo in this. It's like Ham, who was the father of Canaan. And then it says Ham, who was the father of Canaan.
Right.
And then when Noah comes out, he's like, I'm cursing Canaan. And it's weird.
It's very weird.
I mean, so this word and phrase that says, sees the nakedness of his father, it is improperly translated. The word for sees the nakedness of his father is a statement that is actually perceives the nakedness of his father. So here's what that would mean. If we look at Deuteronomy, it would be the law says when it talks about sees the nakedness of his father. So the nakedness of my father would be my mother. That is the Jewish teaching. So this statement, when it is seen in this form, perceive the nakedness of his father, implies one of two things. What is the first one? Molestation would be the first one. Why would that be the case? Well, if a person perceives and interacts with the nakedness of his father, it would be the act of sleeping with his mother.
According to what?
Would be
the Hebrew
saying. Would be the Hebrew tradition,
Okay.
This phrase. It either implies one, a molestation, meaning the father was molested by the son in the act of the son sleeping with his mother. The Midrash does not teach that that's the interpretation. The second interpretation of this is what the Midrash teaches. And the Midrash teaches the other implication of perceives the nakedness of his father that we have to determine, is it molestation or is it castration? So when we read this story and we see that Ham perceived the nakedness of his father, the Midrash says, which one is it? Did he molest his father or did he castrate his father? And they make the assumption, say he castrated his father, and you're like, well, how do you get to that?
Well, because Noah awoke and knew what he had done to him.
So,
to him.
Yes. He awoke from his wine, and people will be like, well, he had a blanket on him, so he knew somebody was in there. No, that blanket was brought in there.
Right.
But being castrated, you would be like, okay, something's missing.
You would clearly know.
Clearly something's missing. Do you remember in that story in Genesis 2 and 3, the thing that was really strange? There was a paragraph or a little stanza in there that really stood out and didn't make any sense. We were like, and then they talked about
the rivers.
This, and it didn't make any sense.
The rivers?
The rivers.
Yeah.
There were 4 rivers, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
How many sons of Noah are there?
3.
What was the command of God to Adam and Eve?
Be fruitful and multiply?
Be fruitful and multiply. What was the command of God to Noah when he sent him off the ark?
To be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply. The first thing that happens, well, if you're encouraging Noah to be fruitful and multiply, what would be the next logical thing that should happen?
Having children.
Noah would have another son.
Right.
But what stands in the way of Noah being able to fulfill the promise of God?
I'm guessing a castration.
A castration. So, this story is just got a whole lot crazier, right?
Oh, man. It feels very soap opera. I don't know. Or worse.
So now, let me back up and ask you the same question I asked before. Why is Noah so mad? He's missing something
Right.
very important to him.
Right.
To be able to...
That's a great question. Why would Ham do something like that?
So think about this, right? So this is the nature of God from Genesis 1 is what?
To know when to say enough.
He knows when to say enough. He creates and he knows when to say enough. He knows when to stop.
Right.
Genesis chapter 2 and 3, what happens?
He knows when to
He knows when to stop
cursing.
cursing. He knows when to say enough when it comes to cursing.
And then he knows when to say enough when it comes to destruction.
But then when it comes to Adam and Eve's kids, Cain and Abel, what has happened? Because in Genesis 2 and 3, desire has come in.
Right.
And now, what is being corrupted? What has been corrupted when it comes to Genesis 4 and the story of Cain and Abel?
Well,
The relationship
yeah.
of people has been
Yeah,
corrupted.
he
What
killed
has
him.
corrupted it? What has corrupted this relationship of people?
Well, I think the desire to please.
Sin.
Sin.
Sin
Well, yeah.
Sin has broken down
There's
and
that
destroyed
as well.
it.
The big thing, sin.
And then we get to the story of Noah and the flood and what has been corrupted now.
His ability to have children.
No.
What?
The story
Noah
and the
it's
flood.
between the father and the son? I don't know.
Noah and the flood, all of creation is now corrupted because of sin.
Okay. I was skipping ahead. Sorry. Because of the flood. Yes.
Sin has run rampant, and the story of Noah and the flood is God was upset because man's heart was set on evil all the time, which seems really crazy.
Right.
But creation now was corrupted because of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And God knows when to say enough and doesn't destroy everything when it comes to the flood, and he gives the rainbow. And here we are with this follow-up to the creation story, but instead of everything being good, God just gives them the order to multiply. And then sinfulness survived, didn't it?
Yeah, clearly.
And obviously, Ham does not know when to say enough.
No, and I honestly don't know what overtook him to make that decision. And, it's like for us, even in our experience as parents, what possessed you to do that? In what world did you think that would be a good idea? I don't know. And I wonder if it's one of those situations. Like, what in the world overtook you that you would think?
So now Noah has been castrated by his son Ham. And he has his ability to reproduce and to have another son and to fulfill the mission that God has given him has been taken. And so what does Noah do?
He curses.
Curses who?
Canaan.
The son of Ham.
Which I think is interesting because that's not even the firstborn of him.
Nope. But it's the one who wronged him.
No, Canaan's not the firstborn of Ham. Is he?
Canaan was the father of Sidon.
Sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. He was the youngest.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder why he would do that to Canaan and not to Cush.
No idea. Isn't it crazy, though, that... So Ham, the father of Canaan. Ham's the father of Canaan. Canaan is the one being cursed. You've stolen the ability for me to have a son and to continue on and to fulfill the mission of God. And so now, Noah is obviously not God. But he uses the cursing, and the word for cursing that is assigned to and only used by God to curse his offspring's offspring because he stole the ability for him to have offspring. Doesn't that change the context of this story a little bit?
For sure.
Well, in verse 19, it says, these are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth.
Yeah.
Spread. So
Yeah, the whole earth was populated.
it already tells you Noah is no longer
Yeah, he's not populating the earth.
just the three boys.
So it changes how, like, again, I'm telling you, I have spent all of my life in church, and I have never been taught on this particular passage of Scripture.
Well, I can see why. Although,
Don't you think because it's not taught that it raises so many of the questions that we have?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It definitely raises these questions.
You don't think so? Because in most cases, unless God leads you to a place where there's something that you want to learn right now from this,
So here's
the only important part is the part that you know that God brought people through the flood, and then started in a different place. Now it does give credence to this is not the first time God's been angry.
that's right. I would say this.
Last time that he got angry,
It's
Moses, listen, back up.
I'm gonna kill them all. Yeah. So yeah, this isn't the only time that God's ever been angry. So I would say a couple of different things about this story. One, we're given clear indication that the nature of humanity is not the nature of God.
Right.
And this is just another echo of God's call to his people to try to take on his character. And his character is to know when to say enough. And the call of God and the draw of God, even in this moment, when Noah finds himself wounded, taken advantage of, and hurt beyond repair in a lot of ways. Yeah. That the echo of the call of God is still to not try to claim for yourself the position of God. To not put your own immediate in front of the long term for everyone else. And so remember, we're still at a point where these stories are going to be shared with the Jewish people in the desert. Historically, the teaching is these are being taught in the shadow of Mount Sinai on the backside of receiving the Ten Commandments. Because they still are learning who God is and what his story is. And they're given clear indication that God intended things to be good, and we systematically have led this astray. Even so, when he shows us grace and mercy and favor to repopulate the earth and to replenish the earth out of its own destructive tendency, the challenge is we carry that destructive tendency with us, and we have to know the call of God is still continually, hey, trust the story and know when to say enough. Take on my character. And it shows us here, even people who have the favor of God and are favored by God to go through certain things and to lead humanity through certain things, still struggle with living up to the character and nature of God. And Noah was wronged. There's no question about that. He was missing something vital to completing the task that God had placed in front of him. And he doesn't stop. He continues cursing. Not just Ham, he attacks his offspring. So much so that this curse lives on in being the offspring that fills the land, that these are the same people that when this people are in the wilderness, the command of God when they get to the edge of the wilderness is to destroy these people. Because Ham, from this point forward, because of his actions and because of the curse of Noah, the lineage that runs through Shem and the lineage that runs, I believe it's Shem. It might be Japheth. Hold on. Sorry, I lost it. It might be Japheth. Japheth's offspring, the chosen people of God, are going to war and fight and compete against these offspring of Ham for the rest of eternity. It never stops, and it's still going on today.
Right.
And it's because has its roots in a man who was favored by God, who didn't know when to say enough.
Japheth was the oldest.
Yeah, Japheth was the oldest. Yeah.
So they listed him backwards.
Any other questions? It's kind of a shorter study, but definitely important when we're talking about the nature of God. Anything else?
No, I
we
was
jump
looking
into discussion time.
No, I was just looking at names.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us online. We're going to break into a time of discussion groups. It's a great habit to be in. Go ahead and read back through this in Genesis chapter 9, verse 18 through 28. And based on just what we have talked about so far, I think through how differently this passage of Scripture impacts you, how differently you interact with it, because it gives so much more context to why these certain images, and understanding that these pieces are what's going to lead us back to understanding of where the treasure is in the story, why the story is so important in the understanding and our growth, that the nature of God is still the same yesterday, today, and forever. So thank you guys so much. Come back and join us 10:30 on Sunday morning. Be blessed.